So imagine a central bank makes this huge promise, right? They say, we're going to get inflation under control. The big question is, should we believe them instantly, or do we kind of sit back and say, I'll wait for the proof? Now, this isn't just some abstract theoretical question. It has massive implications for how economies are managed, and today we're going to dive into what the data actually says. Our guide on this journey is a staff working paper from the Bank of England. It's titled Targeting Inflation Expectations, and it's by Mrudula Duggal. It really tackles this exact puzzle head-on. And right from the get-go, the abstract hits you with a fascinating finding. It says that when central banks adopt these new policies, actual inflation does go down. But, and here's the kicker, people's expectations about what inflation will do in the future, they barely move. So let's unpack that. Here's what we've got on tap. We'll start with that central bank promise. Then we'll look at two competing theories for how we react to it. We'll see how the paper puts those theories to the test with real-world data, find out what really happens, and wrap up with what this all means for the idea of credibility. Okay, so it all boils down to this fundamental question. When a central bank announces a major policy change, like targeting inflation, does the public actually believe them? And these two charts, wow, they really set up the mystery perfectly. Over on the left, you've got Colombia back in 1999. They adopted inflation targeting, and look at that. Both actual inflation and people's expectations just marched downwards together. It's like a textbook success story. But then you look to the right, at the US in 2012. A similar policy gets announced, but expectations, they barely even twitch. They just flatline. So what on earth explains these two totally different reactions? Well, economics has a couple of main schools of thought on this. The first one is all about taking what you might call a rational leap of faith. Okay, so here are the two big competing ideas. On one side, you have what's called rational expectations. This theory assumes we're all pretty smart, we're forward-looking economic agents. We hear the central bank's announcement, we understand it, we believe they're credible, and boom, our expectations just change instantly. But on the other side, there's adaptive learning. This theory suggests we're, a bit more skeptical. We hear the announcement, but we're thinking, yeah, right, I'll believe it when I see it. We wait to see the proof for actual inflation to come down before we change our minds. And this chart here, it visualizes that rational expectations theory perfectly. So imagine you've got an economy with pretty high inflation. The central bank announces a new lower target, and just like that, like flipping a switch, both inflation and everyone's expectations jump right down to that new target. It's a clean, sharp, immediate shift, all driven by the power of that announcement. But what if we're not so quick to trust? What if that's not how people really work? That brings us right to the second theory, which paints a picture of a much more cautious, skeptical learner. And right here, we see the alternative in action. Instead of that sharp, sudden jump, we get this gradual, sloping curve. The policy is announced, sure, but expectations only begin to drift downwards, slowly, as people learn from each new inflation report that comes out. It's kind of like having a friend who's always late. If they suddenly promise to be on time, you don't just instantly believe them. You wait to see them actually show up on time, again and again, before you start adjusting your own expectations of when they'll arrive. Okay, so we have the instant believers on one side and the skeptical learners on the other. To figure out which theory actually holds up in the real world, the paper digs deep into the data. And the methodology here is really robust. So first, the author uses survey data on professional forecasters from the IFO World Economic Survey. So we're looking at what the experts are thinking. Then, the analysis covers 32 different countries that all adopted inflation targeting, just at different times. Now this is really key because it allows for a powerful statistical method called an event study model. This model basically lets you isolate the effect of the policy change. It's a clever way of asking, okay, what happens specifically because of this new policy and not because of something else? So after all that work, you've got these two theories. You've gathered data from dozens of countries. What's the final verdict? What actually happens when these policies are put into practice? Well, here it is, the crucial point. The data comes down firmly on the side of the skeptics. When a country implements inflation targeting, survey expectations, they barely budge. They stay remarkably flat, showing no immediate belief in the new policy. But, and this is so important, actual inflation really does start to fall. So it's not a story of expectations leading reality. It's exactly the other way around. Reality changes first. This finding, that reality has to change before our expectations do, isn't just some dusty academic point. It has huge, real-world implications for how central banks should operate and how they should think about their own power. So the big takeaway is this: credibility is earned, not announced. A central bank can't just declare it has credibility. Announcements, no matter how slick or well communicated, don't seem to be enough to shift what people really believe. Central banks have to first deliver the results. They have to actually put points on the board by bringing inflation down, and only then will the public's expectations slowly start to catch up. It is a gradual, hard-won process. And that leaves us with a really critical question to chew on. If a central bank's words have less power than we might have thought, and it's only their actions that truly matter for shaping belief, what does that mean for the future of central banking? It really suggests the job is less about making grand pronouncements and much more about the slow, steady, difficult work of just delivering results.